Macabre, gruesome and horrifying, ghastly. Of, pertaining to, dealing with, or representing death, especially its grimmer or uglier aspect. Of, or suggestive of, the allegorical dance of death. Prepare yourself for these macabre moments.
This is Marie Samuels, and welcome to the new and improved Macabre Moments. And I want you all to lock your doors and open your minds, because the shit is about to get real. Tonto and Cryptosabi have mounted up. The dynamic duo has returned. The new co-host of Macabre Moments, I'd like to welcome Eric Altman.
Yay!
Yay, Eric, thank you so much for co-hosting Macabre Moments with me.
It's a real pleasure, Marie. Thank you for asking.
Oh my gosh. I am so excited to have you back. I have missed you, my friend. I've missed doing the shows with you, and I'm just very humbled that you have come out of retirement to co-host Macabre Moments with me.
Well, like I said, it's an honor to be here, and I'm very humbled that you asked me to participate and be a co-host. The roles are reversed, and I'm going to kind of like this because I get to sit back and chill and chime in from time to time and let you kind of run the ship. So thank you for having me.
And it's only fair, right? Because, you did it for 4 years. So hopefully I can get 4 years out of you. Are you going to commit to that right now, please?
Well, this old horse is maybe on his last giddy up, but we'll go as long as we can. How's that sound?
I'll take it. I will take it.
Okay, good deal. We're going to have fun, though. I'm really happy to be here and excited as well. And it's good to talk to you as well. I mean, it's been a couple of months since we've chatted, and it's going to be a fun time. I'm looking forward to some of the guests that you're going to have on and talking with them again, and just our friendly banter every month we're on the show together.
Yes, it's going to be good times for all. So I hope everybody's as excited as I am that Eric is back with Marie. Like I said, the dynamic duo.
Yay! That's my Muppet, the Kermit the Frog. Yay!
He does it very well. Today we don't have a guest because it's Eric's first show back, so we decided we were going to cover a couple of the new paranormal shows that are out. I think they're both on Travel Channel right now. So spoiler alert, for those of you who have not seen an episode of Believers or you have not seen an episode of Hotel Paranormal, you probably want to turn off now because that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to start with the show Believers. And I only saw the second episode of this. I missed the first episode. So if you would be so kind, Eric, if you could give us kind of a recap of what happened in the first episode.
Well, the first episode was mainly about the Jackie Hernandez case out of San Pedro, not San Bernardino like I first thought, but San Pedro, California, that was investigated by Dr. Barry Taff, our good friend. And it's mainly focused around the photographer. I believe his name was Jeff Williams. And he's on the show, and he recounts his experiences by interviewing Jackie, and another photographer, videographer by the name of Barry Conrad was with him. And he basically recounts his experiences at the house. And for those who don't remember this Jackie Hernandez case, this is the famous case from the late 1980s where she had poltergeist activity going on in the house, bangs, thumps, noises in her attic, blood platelet drops on the wall that turned out to be I think it was plasma.
Yeah.
Is what I think it was. And this is the incident where Jeff, the photographer, went up in the attic to investigate the weird sounds and ended up getting hung by some unseen force on a nail on one of the cross beams in the attic. And there's a famous picture online if you Google Jackie Hernandez haunting or the San Pedro haunting with Dr. Barry Taff. You can find that information there. And it's a really interesting case. And I believe Dr. Barry Taff was involved with it, although the literature I've seen doesn't really show much of him on it. But I think he was, in some way or another, he was involved with investigating it. But regardless, they show archival footage that actually occurred at Jackie's residence, her first residence, where Jeff was hung. It shows him coming down out of the attic with a rope around his neck. And I thought that the first part of the show was pretty interesting, hearing his recounting of what happened back then. And I remember the case very well when it was on Sightings, I think it was, and some other paranormal shows back in the 1980s. And then the second episode I don't remember too much about. It was kind of just, I was just to the point I was numb after hearing this and hearing his just retelling of the story. The third case, I believe, was an officer that came on and talked about a car accident that occurred where a woman and her son went missing, and then a woman claimed she saw a body laying on the side of the road at this mile marker 13 on this highway. And she reported it to the police, and the police went out and investigated, didn't find anything. And then the missing woman's sister came into the police department telling the police that she had this really vivid dreams where her sister was coming to her in the dreams and telling her, come look for me on the highway, this is where I'm at. And the police, of course, didn't believe her. And finally, the officer in question was out there on that bend in the highway on mile marker 13 and happened to look down over the embankment at night, and he saw something metal, and he went down the embankment to investigate, and sure enough, it was the car that had the mother and young son. I think he was 3 years old, were both in the front seat, and the mother, of course, was deceased, but the 3-year-old son was still alive, barely alive, and he was able to rescue him and get him to the hospital. And the officer recounts that and talks about the other experiences from the woman who claimed she saw the body. And he speculates, he says, there was obviously something more involved going on here than just a woman disappearing, something possibly from beyond the grave where she was projecting herself up on the road for someone to see her, and then coming to her sister in the dreams to tell her where she was. And he was
probably
pretty
to
convinced.
Save the baby.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said probably to save the child. She came from beyond the grave, or reached out from beyond the grave to save her son while he was still alive. And that episode was that part of the episode was kind of cool. And the first part, of course, with this Jeff Williams photographer guy in the San Pedro case was okay. But I didn't see the second episode, so I don't know how the second episode was. But the first one, it's your cookie cutter paranormal show. They have the actual eyewitness retelling what they experienced, and then they have actors reenact what happened. So that's what the first episode was about.
All right, so I watched the second episode last night. I fell asleep halfway through it, woke up, went back to where I had fallen asleep and hit play again. But now it's escaping me what I actually watched. Probably because I was half asleep when I was watching it. I'm really thinking hard. I just watched it last night, Eric. I honestly cannot remember what the show was about.
It was that bad.
But, okay. No, I remember. Thank you for saying that. That was the trigger I needed.
It was that bad?
Yes. Yes. So it started out, they were covering the case of a gentleman that owns a wrecking yard, an automobile wrecking yard. And he has a contract with the police department. So any of the cars that are involved in wrecks where people have passed away, those cars are brought to his yard. And, I assume he probably sells what parts he can off of these cars. So one night, an officer brings a car, and there was a fatality. Well, it wasn't a fatality. The woman, she died on the scene, but they were able to revive her, but she was in a coma. And so she was at the time the car was brought to the wrecking yard, she was alive and in a coma in the hospital. And a few nights after the car had been on the lot, he started to notice strange things happening he went and locked a gate, and he was locking up for the night. He locks up this one particular gate, works his way around the yard, he's locking everything up, comes back around to the first gate that he's locked, and the gate's wide open. And so he says, well, well, maybe I just didn't lock it. So he relocks the gate, starts to walk away, and hears the gate open again. So he turns around, and the gate's open. And he said, okay, I pulled on the lock. I know it was locked this time. So he locks it a third time, goes back into his office, and he has got security cameras all around. So he rewinds the footage because he thinks someone's on the property messing with him, right? And so he rewinds the footage to figure out who's opening the gate. And they showed the CCTV, this, whatever it's called, footage, and the gate just opens on its own, right? So then I think it's the following night, the husband comes to get his wife's belongings out of the car. And at this point, she's still in a coma. And he's getting the stuff out of the car, and he pulls out her cell phone and opens it up. And her screensaver on her phone is a picture of her and her husband, and that, upsets the husband. And the owner of the wrecking yard is, so empathetic for this guy. He just feels terrible for this man. So they put all of his stuff or her stuff in a little box, and they proceeded to start walking away from the car. And the husband's cell phone starts to ring, and he pulls it out of his pocket, and it's his wife's cell phone calling him. So he answers the phone, and he's desperately, the wrecking yard guy said he's desperately listening for something, anything, what's coming through, but the call was maybe 30 seconds. It was just dead air, and then the call hangs up, and then they check the wife's phone, and he had powered it down, and it was powered off. So they were like, okay, that's kind of weird. Well, another night goes by, and he is working late at the wrecking yard, and he's watching the monitors because he's feeling uneasy. He's like, okay, there's something going on with this car and with gates opening and freaky phone calls. So, as he's doing his paperwork, he's, checking the monitors, right, on it for the cameras, just keeping an eye out. And he looks up, and he happens to notice there's this white figure that's bouncing kind of over the cars. And it appears that it's an apparition. It looks like it's a woman wearing a white shirt with her hair in a bun. So he calls 911. And he calls 911 and says, I have a trespasser here at the wrecking yard. I need you to send an officer. And the officer that responds to the call is the officer that brought the car from the accident. It's the same officer. So he comes into the office, and he says, well, take me over to where you saw the intruder, air quote, intruder, right? So they go to where they saw the intruder, and it's right at the woman's car. And he had showed the officer the footage. And so when they go to the car and the officer sees where the air quote intruder was, he says, are you messing with me? He asked the wrecking guy, are you messing with me? And he's like, no, this is where I saw the thing floating, right? And he's like, the woman was wearing a white shirt, and she had her hair in a bun. Because he was at the scene. He was one of the first ones that responded to the scene of the accident. So, and saw her get revived, actually. So, but my problem with the show Believers was I felt like, and this just is my opinion, I felt like the witness was actually an actor. It didn't seem like it was the real guy telling the story. And I don't know if it's because he's somewhat disconnected himself from it, just maybe for like mental health or safety reasons, or just because he doesn't want to really, believe that that's what happened to him, or if they're having actors portray these people. But to me, it came across that the person that was telling the story, that was supposed to be the experiencer, the actual person, I felt he was an actor. And now, did you feel that way when you watched the first episode?
The first guy, the Jeff Williams, it didn't seem like he was an actor. It seemed like he was the original guy from the case, but although what he seemed to be talking about seemed scripted. In other words, when he did his recounting of what he experienced, it seemed like it was written and he was reading it from a teleprompter.
So that might be what I was picking up on, was it was really the guy, but it wasn't his words. Right.
That's the impression I got from the first episode. But I did catch, I think it was part of the second episode, when there was a family living in an apartment and somehow they picked up some EVPs of a guy named Luther, or the name Luther, and it turns out that person was there and he died tragically, and they went and visited his grave at the end of the episode. But the show itself just seemed like another cookie cutter show of all the shows that are on the Travel Channel right now. It didn't seem anything new, or it didn't, to me anyways, it didn't seem like it was, a spin on anything different, a different take, or it just seemed like the typical cookie cutter, bad acted, poorly acted TV show.
Right. And so then there's Hotel Paranormal. And for those that don't know, it's hosted by Dan Aykroyd. And I put all my chips on Dan Aykroyd. This entire show was supposed to be about Hotel Paranormal. And you would think that a show hosted by Dan Aykroyd would be on the up and up and well produced. And I was severely disappointed in this show.
I was too.
Yeah.
It was bad.
It was, so Believers was bad. Hotel Paranormal is worse. And again, it's very much exactly the same thing, where you have an experiencer telling their experience at whatever hotel they were at. Some of them have their own footage that they provide. Some didn't even have any footage. Didn't even seem to have... Well, I'll get to that. So the first story in Hotel Paranormal was a trucker who had stopped for the night and, got a hotel room somewhere, and goes into the hotel room, and he's in the hotel room for not very long before he realizes the room's phone had popped, the receiver had popped off the cradle. I think that's how it started, right?
Yeah, he was actually a repo man or something like that. He drove.
Yes, that's right. He was a repo man because he was trying to do everything like low key.
Right.
Yes.
And he did have the picture or the video of the phone. Actually, the phone laying off the cradle, hanging down off the desk. But there were other things that happened in the episode as well. There were different noises he heard and things rolling off of desks and stuff like that. And it really freaked him out. And as a matter of fact, this first came to light, his story first came to light on that show Paranormal Caught on Film, or Caught on Camera.
Yeah.
That reality show where everybody submits their paranormal videos. That was on there, and it was a little more in depth on that show. It was actually the whole entire film before he finally got scared and ran out of the hotel room.
Yeah, I mean, he also got footage. There was video footage of the receiver coming out of the cradle again. He, according to him, this was his footage that he provided. That the phone came out of the cradle for a third time, and at that point, he went down to the concierge and said he wanted to switch rooms. So they put him in a different room, but he still felt uneasy. He proceeds to leave the hotel, and he says he's still feeling uneasy. He's feeling watched. He's got just a bad vibe while he's driving down the road. So he decides to take a selfie because he feels like there's somebody in the back seat. He provides a photograph where he says that there's an apparition in the back seat. And to me, that translated, when I saw the image, I instantly thought of the ghost apps, right? Where you can insert a ghost.
Yep.
that it was just, to me, it was crystal clear that's what it was, that in my opinion. And then he gets home and starts becoming enraged and screaming at his wife and mistreating his wife. And they deduce that he has become possessed by this spirit that was in this hotel room that got in the backseat of his car. And they take him to a church to have an exorcism performed. And there's footage of the exorcism. And, well, the end of the exorcism is all they showed, where he claims to, where he says he passed out. And that's when he felt the presence leave him after he passed out. But during the exorcism, he's in the main room of a church. It's like where they normally have church services, and he's at the podium where the priest or the minister or whatever denomination guy would stand and give his sermon. And he got all the way down to his underwear. And then fainted, and then woke up. She's gone. I feel so much better. Everything's so light, and I feel so free. So, and I'm paraphrasing, but just to give you an idea of the disappointment that was Hotel Paranormal, that was the first case that they... Did I miss anything on that guy?
No, I think you covered it pretty well.
So then they go on to, I think it was a group of 5 teenagers that were in Italy, and they were staying at a hostel. Mm-hmm. And there, if I remember correctly, it was two guys and 3 girls. And the 2 guys had a room, and the 3 girls had a room. They had separate rooms. So the girls were in one room, and the boys were in another room. And this young man is recounting his story of going to Italy, right? And what happened while they were at this haunted hostel. So the story goes, according to him, that he hears screaming from the girls' room, and so they go running over to see what's going on, and they move the bed sheets or the comforter back on the bed, and the bed is full of black hair. But he has no footage. They take no pictures. There's no pictures of them in Italy at all. Not even pictures of the trip. So I'm highly suspicious of this one because he didn't provide anything but a story.
Yeah, he just recounted it, and then they did reenactment with actors.
Right, and you're going on a trip to Italy, you'd be taking pictures and probably video as well. And if you were staying at a hostel, wherever you were, or any hotel room, if you flip back the blankets and the bed is full of hair, you think you'd take a picture of it, right?
Or ask for another room.
Say, but you would think he would have taken a picture.
Right. If weird stuff was going on, you think he would want to document it. Just okay, weird stuff's going on. I got to get a picture of this.
Right.
Yeah, you would think he would take a picture or do something.
But they didn't even have one picture of the group of them, and in front of some landmark in Italy. Like, oh yeah, here we are, the 5 of us on our trip. Yay! No. So, it was really disappointing, and like I said, I just. With Dan Aykroyd being the host, I had such high expectations that when I saw this episode, it was just, it was garbage.
Well, the second episode was a little better, and I only saw half of the second episode, being that I was getting ready for today's recording. But the second episode takes place, at least the part I saw, took place at the haunted Palmer Hotel in Minnesota. And that place is haunted. It does have a long history of activity.
Oh, yeah.
And it talks about the owner and her experiences as they purchased the hotel and they were getting ready to reopen, and some of the weird things that had happened. They talked to the pub manager and her experiences. And I don't recall watching that portion of the episode, whether or not they had archival footage or pictures or anything like that. Again, it was the people who experienced it, portrayed by actors recreating their experiences. And the only thing that stands out to me from that episode is when she went into one of the rooms to make sure the bed was made, that the entire room, including the bed, was covered like a carpet of dead flies.
Ooh.
And she walked in, there was dead flies everywhere, and she makes a comment in the episode that she couldn't step on the floor without stepping in dead flies. And that was the only thing that really stood out to the episode in that one. I haven't seen the rest of it, so I don't know how the rest of the episode turns out. But yeah, so far, that show is kind of a stinker too.
Yeah.
I'm not real impressed. And I was excited when you told me about the show. Dan Aykroyd's involved with it, and we all know Dan has a huge interest, as does his father, or did his father, in UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
And
the paranormal.
And the paranormal as well.
I mean, he wrote. Well, did he write Ghostbusters?
I believe he co-wrote Ghostbusters
with Sam. What's his last name?
Ivan Reitman.
No, the guy that played Igor. I thought.
I can't remember who wrote it exactly, but I know he did write. He co-wrote it.
Yeah.
So and I know he has an interest in the paranormal, but I had high expectations for this show, and so far, with just 2 episodes in, I'm being let down. But that's just my opinion. Other people may love the show. It's just not what I was hoping it would be, nor is the show Believers. Right,
and there, it's basically, if you've seen Paranormal Caught on Tape or Caught on Camera, what I think it's Paranormal Caught on Camera. It's basically that same format, except it's less cases. It's 1, 2, or 3 cases, so they spend a little bit more time on each individual case. Whereas on Paranormal Caught on Tape or Paranormal Caught on Camera, they squish a good 10 probably in there. So that is what we think of the new shows so far.
Well, if I can surprise you, since you surprised everybody with me being on the show, I want to inform you and our listeners of a new show that's coming to Travel Channel that might actually be worth checking out, because this is coming from a very dysfunctional family who has ties to the dark side, if you will, and they like to go a little crazy once in a while and bark at the moon. Any idea of who I'm talking about?
The crazy train? Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about.
So this article is released on the travelchannel.com, and you can read it. I'm not going to read all of it. I'll paraphrase some of it. But the first family of darkness is coming to the Travel Channel with the Osbournes, who want to believe. And that show is an 8-part series starring Jack, Ozzy, and Sharon Osbourne, and it premieres Sunday, August 2nd at 10 p.m. And they're going to talk about all things paranormal, not just hauntings and ghostly apparitions, but they're going to talk about UFOs. They're going to talk about cryptid creatures. So they're going to look at paranormal evidence and video footage and camera pictures and all that stuff, and they're going to give it their own little critique, if you will. So that should be quite an interesting show when that does come out.
Yes, so I love Jack and Ozzy. I watched when they did their tour across the United States.
On Portals to Hell?
No. Jack and Ozzy.
Jack and Ozzy.
Okay. They have like this bonding experience, right? Where they travel across the United States and just go see different attractions in different states. 1 or 2 paranormal related, because as you know, everybody knows, Jack Osbourne's very, very interested in the paranormal. Mm-hmm. So a few of them had a paranormal tone to them, depending on where they were. In fact, when they were in Seattle, they went and saw a medium here, which I thought was really cool.
Let me read you a quick summary of the show from the Travel Channel page. And I think this is going to be a lot of fun, and I think you and I will have a lot of good stuff to talk about for at least 8 episodes.
Right.
It says, during each hour-long episode, Jack will reveal a series of mind-blowing paranormal clips from the great beyond for his parents, Ozzy and Sharon, to witness. From Bigfoot to UFOs, poltergeists, creepy dolls, and unexplained apparitions, the couple will review and critique each caught-on-camera moment, a compilation of Jack's favorite pieces of evidence, not ones to shy away from, honesty and humor, of course, There will be no shortage of fun, antics, and lively commentary in the Osborne screening room.
It's going to be good. It's going to be a good show to watch.
I wonder how many times they're going to use the bleep button on this show.
Well, I mean, with Ozzy, they probably won't have to. Only because you can't really understand what he's saying anyway.
Well, a lot of every other word that comes out of his mouth is the F-bomb. So,
yes.
Yeah, it might be all bleeping. It's Jack and Sharon talking normally, and Osby going bleep 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 bleep.
Yeah,
bleep.
what the bleeping this and the bleeping that, and bleep you, Jack, for making me watch this bleeping video. Yeah.
That's a bleeping Bigfoot.
oh my gosh, Eric, that reminds me. So during their whole world tour, they kicked off on the East Coast of the United States. And so early on they were in Florida, and they went, I think it's Florida is where Robert the Haunted Doll is.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And they went and saw Robert the Haunted Doll, and Jack bought a little mini Robert, right? And Ozzy hated it. The whole trip. He kept trying to get this thing away from Jack, and Jack was like, look, you need to respect the doll, right? He kept telling his dad, you need to respect the doll. And Ozzy was like, I don't want this doll around. It's just causing problems. It's creepy. I don't want it. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. So now, 4 or 5 episodes in, 6 episodes in, Ozzy successfully hides Robert from Jack, and they're getting ready to leave their destination. And they're doing this tour. They're driving an RV the whole time. They're driving across country and stopping at these attractions in each city and state, right? Mm-hmm. So Jack is searching high and low, searching the RV for Robert, and he's like, "Listen, I quit playing around, Dad. Like, I need you to tell me where Robert is. You can't be mean to Robert. Bad things are going to happen." And he's like, "Oh, that bloody doll that gave us a flat tire and ruined the engine of the old RV." One of their RVs broke down right after they got the Robert doll, and they had to get a whole new RV. From that point on, Ozzy blamed Robert for everything, right? It was that little mini Robert that was causing all the problems. But Jack was seeing it from the other perspective, and that was, as long as we respect the Robert doll, we will have no problems. So quit being mean to the Robert doll, and we won't have any of these problems, right? So it's hilarious. It's so funny how Ozzy just hated the Robert doll. And so finally they get to the West Coast. Their last stop on their driving tour is here in Seattle, Washington. And then from here, they take a flight to Alaska. And Ozzy is adamant with Jack. He's like, I don't want that thing on the plane. Do not bring that doll on the plane. I don't want the plane to crash. And, of course, Jack is thinking the opposite. Well, we have to bring the doll. We have to. If we don't, the plane's going to crash, right? And I won't divulge what happens in the end. I'll let you guys, watch it. But, yeah, I forgot about the Robert the Doll thing. I bet they'll talk about that in the show. I bet Jack will even have Robert. He will bring Robert out, probably scare the shit out of Ozzy with it, and be like, "Oh, Dad, look what I have!" And Ozzy's just gonna lose his mind, right? He hated that doll. He hated it.
I bet. Yeah, it starts August 2nd at 10 p.m. Eastern on the Travel Channel. So check it out. It's called The Osbournes Want to Believe.
Yeah, so I'm excited for that. I've got my hopes up for that one.
That should be quite entertaining. They're the probably one of the most dysfunctional couples out there.
Right? I was just going to say I'm not the biggest fan of Sharon. I love Jack. I love Ozzy. Sharon, on the other hand, I could do without.
Yeah, it makes two of us.
Well, I'm glad we're on the same page. We're on the same page usually, just about everything.
Pretty much,
yeah. So with the remaining time that we have left, since Hotel Paranormal was such a flop, I thought we were going to have like a whole hour's worth of talking about how great the show was and how great Dan Aykroyd was, and for his part as a host, he does a great job hosting the show. I'll give him that. I figured we might as well talk about my investigation of the Hotel Cecil.
Yeah, we never really did talk about it in entirety. You've kind of dropped little hints in there, here and there, and little tidbits of what you did, but you never really talked about the entire investigation. So I'd like to hear about it.
Right. So the Elisa Lam case. For those of you, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Elisa Lam case. In February of 2013, I believe it was. I can't even remember the dates anymore. Elisa Lam came from Vancouver and took a Greyhound into the U.S., and she was doing this solo trip, a 21-year-old girl, Canadian girl, and she was doing this trip by herself, and she made it into L.A., where she checked into the Cecil Hotel. And she was supposed to check out, I believe it was February 1st, and she didn't check out, so they went, to her room to find out, to tell her she needs to check out or pay for another night or whatever, and she wasn't in her room. And she had been calling her parents every day during the trip while she was gone. And she had made her way through Washington and through California and calling her parents every day. She didn't get the parents didn't get a call from her the day before she was supposed to check out. They didn't get a call from her the day she was supposed to check out. So they contact the parents, and the parents say, we haven't heard from her. We're concerned. She was calling every day. They end up flying to LA, and a missing person report is put out on the news looking for this girl. This girl is missing. She's gone missing. She was traveling alone. She was last seen at the Cecil Hotel. She never checked out. All of her belongings still in the hotel. Her purse, her medication, all of, clothing, everything. Help us find this girl. Help us find this girl. On February 14th, I believe it was. I remember this because it was Valentine's Day. On the 14th is when they released the footage of her in the elevator. And now this is what became such a sensation and grabbed the attention of so many people about this case, was the last footage of Elisa Lam. She's in the elevator of the Cecil Hotel. It's just before midnight. And you can tell she's probably in her pajamas. She's in some oversized sweat shorts and a baggy t-shirt and flip-flops. And she's in the hotel, and she's on the 14th floor of the hotel, but her room was on the 4th floor. So this is odd. There's a total of 15 floors in the Cecil Hotel. The 15th floor is for long-term residents, people that book it for a month or 2 months, and then floors 14 and down are for overnight guests, whatever. Now the Cecil's before the Elisa Lam thing happened, the Cecil Hotel tried to rebrand themselves as they're calling themselves the Stay, right? So if you search the Cecil Hotel, it'll reroute you to a website for the Stay. And the first, second, third, and fourth floors have been remodeled. So they're nice and modern and new looking. And they're trying to, I know this because I stayed there. They're trying to get everybody to stay in those first 4 floors because they're the remodeled floors, right? Mm-hmm. So on February 14th is when they released this video, the CCT. Am I saying that right, Eric?
The closed cap, the security camera footage.
Yeah. Of her in the elevator. And she's making very strange motions. She's jumping in and out of the elevator like she's hiding from someone. And now this video spoke to me. Like, when I watched it for the first time, and I have watched this video probably 100 times since. I mean, I've really delved into this. But I'm watching her, and I'm watching what she's doing, and I instantly, I'm just like, she's not, it's not her. Like, I feel like there's something else going on. Like, she might be possessed. was what my gut was telling me, right? Just from watching, I'm just like this, and I don't know this girl. I don't know anything about her. I mean, for all I know, this could be something that she typically does, right? I don't know. But watching it, I was just like, the motion she's doing and the way she's hiding and the fact she was on the 14th floor when her room was on the 4th floor and it was, midnight before her last day there. She was supposed to check out the following morning. It was just so odd to me, right? Well, now the plot thickens. Another, I think, 2 weeks goes by. And then the tenants, the people that are staying in the hotel start complaining about the brown water and it having a funny taste. That's when the maintenance man goes up onto the roof of the Cecil Hotel to check they have 2 giant water cisterns on top of the roof that provide water for the showers, the faucets, the cafe. And both the tank lids are closed. Okay. He opens one tank lid, looks in there, doesn't see anything weird. Opens the second tank lid, and there's Elisa Lam floating in the tank. And he's found her body. And she's inside this water cistern on the roof of the Cecil Hotel. And the police are now investigating a potential homicide, right? How did this girl get on the roof? How did this girl get in the tank? The last footage of her, she was on the 14th floor in the elevator. And then you see her walk out of the elevator down the hall, and that's the last you ever see of Elisa Lam. That's it, until she's found in the water tank, right? So I'm thinking the weird thing about it was, as I'm watching the video, her last name's Lam, Lam, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm familiar with Aleister Crowley summoning a demon named Lam. And I'm sure you've seen the drawing of Lam, right? That Aleister Crowley did.
I may have. I may have not.
It's probably one of the first, in my opinion, not counting like indigenous people from cave drawing times, one of the first depictions or portraits of an extraterrestrial. It looks like an alien. Like, it looks like a gray, right? But it's a demon. So those of you who don't know who Aleister Crowley is, in a nutshell, he was an occultist. He had his own air quote church, if you will, that he founded and ran. And he was very much into dark magic, dark arts. He even he attempted to perform the Goetia at the Loch Ness, and a lot of people blame him for summoning Nessie. He was dubbed the wickedest man on the earth. He was exiled from Italy. Or maybe it was Ireland, kicked him out. You're never to return. You're done here. Like, you cannot come back. You're so evil and disgusting, right? So in my head, I'm thinking her last name's Lam, and Aleister Crowley summoned a demon named Lam, and maybe somehow this has something to do with it, but how did the two relate? So I start researching. I start doing this research. Come to find out, Richard Ramirez, who was the Night Stalker, lived on the 14th floor of the Cecil Hotel for a year and a half, during the whole time he did all of his rapes and murders and everything, all the horrific deeds that he did. He was living on the 14th floor of the Cecil Hotel during that time. Richard Ramirez was a Satanist. He went to the Church of Satan in San Francisco and met with Anton LaVey. And he said that he was part of a ritual where they were summoning Satan. And he said that night he felt Satan touch him, and he physically touch him. And I think he even had a whisper in his ear. He was so disturbed by this, he actually phoned his mother in El Paso, Texas, and was like, Satan talked to me tonight. Satan talked to me tonight. And she was just like, whatever, you know, they'd already been dealing with him before he left El Paso and his interest in the occult. And there's other things that I know more than I ever wanted to know about Richard Ramirez. Let me tell you that. So during my research, I find out that, you know, Richard Ramirez lived on the 14th floor of the Cecil Hotel, and he was a Satanist. So now I've got my link between Aleister Crowley and Elisa Lam, and that would be Richard Ramirez. Because if it stands to reason that he was into Satanism and the occult, he probably picked up the Goetia and books that Aleister Crowley had published. Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin bought a publishing company strictly to republish Aleister Crowley's writings. And so in the late 70s, early 80s, these books were coming back out on the market thanks to Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. Right? Okay, so now I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, did Richard Ramirez summon Lam? And did Lam go after Elisa Lam strictly because they shared a name? That was my theory. That was it in a nutshell. And with that information alone, I said, okay, I need to find out more. I'm going to LA. I booked 2 nights at the Cecil. My husband and I drove down to LA. And we didn't sleep at the Cecil Hotel. We had another hotel that we were staying in and sleeping in. I only booked the Cecil to investigate. So we were only in that room for maybe 4 hours each night, right? So it was almost like I was paying admission to go in, but I certainly wasn't staying there, right? And that turned out to be a very wise choice, because once we got there, interestingly enough, when we first got there, when I made my reservation over the phone, I requested a room on the 14th floor, and they said that's not a problem. And so I was under the impression that I was going to have a room on the 14th floor. So we get there, and we check in, and he hands me a key, and he says, you're going to be in room 4 something. And I said, is that on the 4th floor? And he said, yeah, it's on the 4th floor. And I said, oh, no, I requested a room on the 14th floor. And he kind of looked at me, and he says, you want to be on the 14th floor? And I said, yeah, that was the request that I made when I made my reservation. I requested the 14th floor. And he's like, well, if you want the 14th floor. And then he kind of goes over to this little hidey hole, and he pulls out a key, right? And hands it to me. And the room number we got, I think, is significant. We got room number 1441. And I was like, okay, here we go. So then we proceed to the elevator, the infamous elevator, right? I push that button. The elevator door is open. They've completely changed the interior of the elevator, so it looks nothing like you see on the footage, that last footage that you see Elisa Lam in. They've changed it completely. Now, if you go to my YouTube channel, Marie Samuels, you'll see I have a 30-minute long, kind of smashed down, condensed, but it's my investigation of the Cecil. And you see me and my husband go in, and you can see us messing with the elevator and pushing different buttons to see if we can replicate. Because when she was stuck on the 14th floor and jumping in and out and doing all the weird stuff she was doing, you could see she was pushing buttons, but the elevator wasn't responding. So we were trying to get the elevator to duplicate that. And it turned out we ended up having the opposite problem, where the door kept closing. And at one point, it literally is closing on me. And you know how, like, if an elevator starts to close on you and it feels that it hits you and then it'll reopen? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that doesn't happen at the Cecil. No. Okay? It's still closing. You need to get in or out. One or the other has to happen. And I have that on footage on my YouTube video.
It doesn't have the sensors in the door that if something gets in, it breaks the sensors, it'll reopen. It's going to close.
Correct.
Okay.
So why the doors weren't responding for her, and there is a door open button, and believe me, this is why I studied the video so hard, was I was trying to watch the pattern of what button she was pushing, so that when I was at the Cecil, I could, push the exact same buttons and see most elevators have a door open and a door close button. And I wanted to know where those were located. Is she pushing the door open button in a panic, thinking she's pushing the door close button, right? So now we're there, we're in the elevator, and it's very apparent to me that she was not pushing the door open button. It was not that button. It was not in the sequence of buttons that she pushed at all. So we get off the elevator, start going down the hall on the 14th floor. And this is where the whole thing was just really weird. All the rooms on the interior of the building, so the rooms that wouldn't have a window to the street, they all had a piece of tape across the door. And it was almost like the tape was there so they could see if someone had opened it. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think I document that in my YouTube video, the tape on the doors to all the ones that don't face the street. But all the rooms on the other side that have windows that, go out to the fire escape and to the street, those are rentable and they're open. What I left out, just because I was fearful that the Cecil Hotel would sue me, there was also a cockroach about 2, maybe 3 inches big on the ground.
Oh my gosh. Holy cow.
Oh, it was disgusting. It was so gross. And then there's this guy sleeping in the hallway that we had to step over.
Huh.
Yeah. To get to our room, and our room was at the very end of the hall. The very last room at the very end of the hall. It was just creepy as hell. So we get in there, tiny room, very small, very, very small, very old, musty, stinky, gross, sweltering hot. There's no AC. We went, I want to say it was August or September when we went. So, in LA, we're talking 90-degree weather, getting down to maybe 70s in the evening. It was just super hot. I wanted to know how easy it was, because the claims were that there was a security system on the door that leads to the roof, and that there were motion sensors on the roof, and that there was no way Elisa Lam could have taken the fire escape, gone on the roof without triggering these motion sensors. And so I wanted to test that theory. We had to wait until the second night, and it was the last thing we were going to do, because if they were going to kick us out, we needed to get kicked out at the end and not at the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. Because, at this point, I'm breaking the rules, going out on a fire escape, trying to get on the roof, or going to the access door and actually pushing it open. I wanted to know if an alarm went off. Like, are they notified if this door is open, right?
Okay.
So we on the 14th floor in room 14. So my other theory is, and this is a common theory. It's not just mine. It's a common theory in the paranormal community that entities and demons can travel through mirrors, right?
Okay.
And what you don't see in the whatever footage of Elisa Lam when she's in that elevator is right outside the elevator on the wall, just out of view of the camera, there's a mirror there. And when she's looking in that direction, she's looking at the mirror. We got the room 1441, which 1441 is a mirror of 14. Now, the number 14 comes up so much in this case. It's mind-blowing. We did some EVP work. We attempted the Ouija board. I tried to contact Elisa Lam. I tried to contact Richard Ramirez. So then I went out onto the fire escape, and I was going to climb the ladder up the roof. And once I got, I'm deathly afraid of heights. Okay. So me even getting on that fire, I crawled, you'll see me in the video. I crawl out of a window onto the fire escape. And this is accessible from the hallway. That you don't have to be in a room to do this. Anybody, the window was wide open, to the fire escape. There's no bars or anything. You can easily crawl right out onto the fire escape. So I do that, and I pan up the ladder, and it's a lot higher than I imagined that I would have to go up that ladder, right? And now I'm starting to have second thoughts. I'm like, okay, think about what you're doing, right? Like, what if you fall? What if whatever it is that you believe got Elisa Lam could potentially knock you off this ladder? Do you want to fall off the wall, the 15th floor of the Cecil Hotel? Is that what you want? At this point, I'm starting to get just wigged out. And I decided, okay, I'm not going to climb up there. I'm not going to do it. It's just too risky. I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. But I did go to the door, and I was going to open the door to see if an alarm went off to notify downstairs that, someone's accessing the roof. Mm-hmm. Now we stood in front of that door for, 3 or 4 minutes, and no security came. And I went out. I was on the fire escape for a good 5 minutes, and then I crawled back in the window. There's cameras out there. There's cameras on the window, and it says, "Do not go out onto the fire escape." Right. Mm-hmm. But no one came up and chastised me or said, don't go out onto the fire escape. No one knew that I'd even gone out the window. No one was paying any attention. So we go to the door, the access door to the roof. And I'm getting ready to open the door, and my husband stopped me. And he said, "No, do not open this door." And I said, I have to, right? And he said, "Do you want to go to jail?" And then I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, we're on Skid Row. And if we get arrested here, we're going to be in jail with all the people from Skid Row that get arrested, right? And if you've never seen Skid Row, it's really a sad sight. And it's just so many homeless people, too many, way too many. We ended up not pushing the door open because we were too scared we were going to get arrested. And then at that point, as I'm coming down the stairs, and this, I failed to point this out in the actual video, but I'm starting to come down the stairs, and I'm holding the camera, so you're seeing my point of view, and I'm starting to come down the stairs, and I stop, and I say, and what I was going to say was, I don't feel right now. And what I change what I say, and I say, I don't like this place right here. And you'll see that the camera's trying to focus, and but there's nothing to focus on. So while I was having that moment of, I'm like, I say, I don't like this place right here. The camera is trying to focus on something, and then it stops. But for a minute there, it's really trying. So let me wrap this up, make a long story shorter. We end up leaving the Hotel Cecil, none the wiser. I did catch a little bit that you'll see on the YouTube video. Nothing that was groundbreaking, really. And it's just been a case that has intrigued me ever since I saw that footage of her in the elevator. Another thing that doesn't sit right with me is I've read the autopsy reports, and when they found her in the tank, she was nude, but the clothing that she was wearing in the elevator was found in the tank with her. But she had taken it off. Whether she took it off and put it in the tank, or took it off once she was in the tank, no one knows, and we will never know, right? But in the report, they talk about there's a white gritty material that is stuck to her clothing, and nowhere in any of the autopsy reports, the detectives' reports, any of the public reports that I was able to find, did they look into what that white granular stuff was on her clothing. And what I think it was the side of the building, right? The side of the building is white concrete, kind of like it's like bubbly concrete when when you have like a popcorn ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's the texture of the outside of the building, and the building's white. So if she took the fire escape up and then crawled over, she would have scraped her body over all that white paint, and that would have stuck to her clothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I did call the detective. I called the LAPD, asked for the name of the detective that had filed the report that witnessed the autopsy, because in LA the detective has to witness the autopsy. And I left a message telling him I'm writing a book about the Elisa Lam case. I have some questions about the white granular material that was found on her clothing. Please return my call. I never got a phone call back. So there's still a mystery. It's still a mystery. My theory is that Richard Ramirez, being the epitome of evil, probably did some sort of stupid ritual that conjured up something, and it may have been Lamb. And maybe this guy went after her because they shared a name, and it was just as simple as that.
While you were sharing your story, I did some research on my own here real quick and found out that there is actually a magazine article. There's a magazine called ParanoiaMagazine.com. That's the website. And it's a conspiracy reader magazine. And they have an article about Aleister Crowley, Elisa Lam, and the secrets of the Cecil Hotel. But it doesn't really talk much about Richard Ramirez. It does a little bit. But interestingly, in this article, it talks about Aleister Crowley. The Cecil was built in 1924, so it was long before Aleister Crowley's time. But it's interesting to find out in this article that
I think I know what you're going to tell me.
In 1898,
yes,
Aleister Crowley was living in a hotel in England called the Cecil Hotel.
It was called it's backwards. Hotel Cecil. But yes, Aleister Crowley did live in a Hotel Cecil.
And he met a gentleman by the name of George Cecil Jones, who was a member of the Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn. Through Jones, Crowley was introduced to the book of the sacred magic of Abramelin, the Maj, and discipline of practical magic. But it does talk about how he did stay at this hotel, the Cecil. They call it the Cecil Hotel in London.
Yeah.
And it was built in 1886 and torn down in 1930. And it no longer remains, but they call it the Evil Twin Hotel of the Cecil out there in Los Angeles.
Yeah. That is all, I found that in my research too. And I mean, there's just, what do you think?
Well, they offer an interesting take on, they're saying the case is resolved in this article, and they offer information as to why they say the case is resolved. And I'm just going to summarize this because you can go to that website, ParanoiaMagazine.com, and just type in Aleister Crowley, Elisa Lam, and the secrets of the Cecil Hotel, and you can read it for yourself. But they give some information in this about her, saying that she was manic depressive. She had epilepsy, or not epilepsy, but bipolar disorder. She had a lot of mental health diseases going on, and she was taking an abundance of medication. And they list some of the medication that she took. Mm-hmm. And they say in this, just to summarize this, they say that contrary to popular belief, the toxicology results are unlikely to be affected by her prolonged stay in the water tank. She was there for, they claim, 3 weeks. And they also talk about how, this is this guy's opinion, his summary, of course, and the guy's name that wrote the article, his name is Andrew Arnett. But Mr. Arnett goes on to say that people with mental issues, such as manic depressives, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, they have immense strength. And that's how she got the lid of the water tank open, and she was so out of her mind because she didn't take some of her medications at that time that she had delusions. That's the whole elevator thing. She was having delusions on the elevator, and this is his opinion now.
I know.
He's saying that her mental health issues caused her to have immense strength to open the lid, to take off her clothes, and to climb into the water tank, and that's where she died.
No. So,
that's what his opinion is.
And I disagree with that for a few reasons. But the most important is I've got the autopsy report open right now. They tested her, I want to say her liver. They because she'd been in the water, they couldn't test her blood. This was in 2013, yeah. And they did find that she had her medication was in her system. She hadn't, so that suggests that she hadn't missed a dose or a few doses of her medication. The other thing is she did a post on social media that I actually was, I have put in the beginning of my book. This is the words of Elisa Lam that she posted in late 2012. Now, remember, this happened in February of 2013. So I want to say she posted this, it was about November of 2012. This is the words of Elisa Lam. I can safely say, and with absolute certitude, that I have found myself again. I lost myself at 17, and after 4 years of pain, loneliness, directionlessness, wandering, I am me again. I feel my heart and brain working together again, and for the last 4 years, they were working against each other that drove me to insanity. But I'm not angry or bitter anymore. I am a manic depressive, and I would not press a button to take it all away. At 21 years young, I understand things only a lifetime will teach you, and I know that this is the most rarest thing of all, possibly the most noblest pursuit next to love. And I think we're going to end the show on the words of Elisa Lam.
Good enough.
How did I'm like, and that I think that's the perfect place to leave it, because ultimately this isn't about a paranormal case. This is about a human being that is no longer with us because of some other, in my opinion, otherworldly reason. And it's infuriating to me that the LAPD was just, it wasn't a homicide, it was an accidental drowning, and we're done. No, not acceptable. I'm sorry.
Well, you as well as I know that the police departments or any scientists in the field will look for rational explanations, and once they have their rational explanation, the case is closed. So regardless of what...
How did she close the lid behind her?
I don't know. No idea, but their rational explanation is that she took her medication, had a manic episode, and she committed suicide by climbing into the tank.
Her medication prevents manic episodes. And her medication was found in her system. And they counted the pills that was left in her room. And she didn't have extras, right? She had taken the pills according to the date that it was filled. That many pills were missing up until the day she was missing. So unless she was just throwing them, in the toilet and not, but even then they found that medication in her system.
Well, that builds up over time as you continually take it, so it's always going to be present.
Right.
But you and I know, and I think we can agree on this, that the scientific community as well as law enforcement, they always look for the rational scientific explanation. And to them, in this case, their determination was that she committed suicide. She wasn't murdered. She committed suicide because they found enough evidence to prove to them that her suicide was caused because she was a manic depressive and they had drugs in her system that she took. And so that's their rationale. And they'll never admit, even if there was somebody who had a suspicion there was a paranormal activity involved or a demon involved or whatever the case may be, that you may think or I may think, regardless of what we think, they're always going to put out something that's rational and explains the situation so they can close the case. And them not getting back to you, that's typical. They're not going to respond to a request like that.
Well, I mean, and that's why I didn't make a second phone call, right? Because it was like, okay, I'll try, but...
That doesn't surprise me with law enforcement. It really doesn't.
Well, yeah, especially with, I mean, I'm sure you've heard it, a ton of times with people in Bigfoot sightings calling 911 and the officers scoffing and going, do we really need to go out there? This lady's calling because she sees a Bigfoot in her yard.
And there's not actually 911 tapes that have that on the actual recording is when the officer answers, Bigfoot? Are you kidding me? Well, let's go check it out. She's calling again, blah, blah, blah. You can actually hear those. There's recordings that actually exist. So, yeah. I mean, you have to keep in mind that your theory or your ideas on this case may be close to the truth. It might be the truth. But the police department or any scientific-minded or skeptic-minded person is going to lean more towards the drugs and her suicide and her mental condition. Yeah. So.
Well, she was going to commit suicide. Why not just jump off the building?
It would have made sense, but maybe she was having delusions and thinking someone was chasing her. That might have explained her odd behavior in the elevator. I honestly don't know. I don't think we're ever going to find out really what truly happened to her. And as you said, it's not about the paranormal. It's not about trying to solve that. It's a tragic case. What happened to that poor young lady?
And I just feel like it was just dismissed, and that's what really crooks my craw. Mm-hmm. Is that it was just it's just a girl in a tank. She's Canadian. Who cares? Whatever.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever really have the true answers.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. There's no way to ever get. I mean, maybe once I pass over and I meet her and I can ask her,
hanging out, having a drink.
Like, what the hell happened, girl? Like, yeah.
Yeah.
But
saddle up to the bar and have a couple shots, and
Is it saddle up to the bar at The Shining?
Yeah.
Get our shine on.
Yep. There you go.
Well,
then you can
shoot me dim my shine.
You can shoot me a message and let me know because I'm curious myself.
Of course, dog. You'd be the first person I'd probably, or second after my husband, right? I got to dick with him first.
Yeah,
because he's a skeptic, so I'm definitely going after him first. All right. Well, this was a wonderful first episode.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun getting back together and talking all things weird and strange, and I'm really looking forward to more shows and future guests and having more fun.
Me too. And I'm so glad to have you back. So
I'm glad to be back.
It's like I said, the return of the dynamic duo. Mm-hmm. Tonto and Cryptosabi have mounted up.
What? Yeah.
You know it. I love it. All right, Parapeeps, thank you so much for tuning in to Macabre Moments. And until the next episode, stay scared.